So this is the iPhone 12. It was just released, it's fantastic, I love it, and now it's the phone that I personally use. However, another phone that I very much liked was, of course, the iPhone 11. And you can certainly get it a lot cheaper nowadays, so this begs the question, should you splash out the extra dosh and get the iPhone 12, or should you save your money and just get the iPhone 11? Let's find out. First off, as always, we're going to be talking about the specs. In the iPhone 12, we have an incremental upgrade to the A14 processor from the A13 processor on the iPhone 11, as well as the same 4GB of RAM, and as always, we're going to be talking more about what this actually means in terms of performance later on. We also have the same storage options at 64, 128, or 256GB, which is, at least in my opinion, a nice range. I mean, I myself have never had a use for the 512GB variant, but if you do need that large storage variant, I would recommend looking elsewhere. That said, 256 gigs is more than enough for most people. Even if you play a lot of games or just have a lot of files, then you have the option for extra storage. Me personally, I'm totally okay with 64GB, as are I think most people, so that's the one that I personally use. But regardless, it is still nice to know that you can get extra storage in case you do need it. In terms of weight, despite the same screen size, the iPhone 12 is significantly lighter, weighing in at 164 grams versus the 194 grams with the iPhone 11. The weight difference is actually pretty noticeable. However, I've never found the iPhone 11 to be too overbearingly heavy. It's just something that I've noticed. In terms of colors, both have multiple color options, the iPhone 11 having red, white, purple, yellow, green, and black, and the iPhone 12 having black, white, red, green, and of course, that nice new blue color that was impossible to find. As for key specs, that's pretty much it. Now, we are going to be covering some more specs like the screen resolution and battery size in their respective segments later on, as well as, of course, talking about how these specs affect performance, but that's about it for now. Moving on, we have build quality. And again, while they do look kind of similar on the surface, there are some pretty subtle differences as well as some not so subtle differences. So let's go over them. Obviously, both phones use a glass and metal build, which just feels amazing. As we can see, the iPhone 12 did get that new squared off design, which I personally love. I found that I actually dropped my phone significantly less because of the new shape. It fits better in my hand, and this means that I can use a bigger screen without that increased drop risk. As I said before, I did actually struggle to use the 10R and the 11 for long periods of time, as I do find that with that rounded off shape, they do still feel a little big in my hand. However, with the new shape, it also gets a nice boost in grippiness. The iPhone 12 also features a new ceramic shield coating, which apparently makes it perform up to 4 times better in drop tests. However, it is still glass, so I would personally recommend a case for both. Both phones also feature an IP68 water resistance rating, which is of course awesome to see. And I've heard that the iPhone 12 does actually perform a little better. From some places, I've even heard that it can survive in up to 6 meters of water for 30 minutes versus the typical 2 meters that the iPhone 11 gets. However, as I've said before, this is more of a failsafe than something to rely on. I mean, I personally wouldn't recommend getting it more than splashed. But regardless, it is good to know that it's there if you need it. Overall, in terms of build quality, it does seem like the iPhone 12 got a nice little upgrade here. However, it's certainly not night and day, and I think as long as you do put a good case on your phone, you should be fine regardless. Alright, so up next we have the screen, and this is an area where I think the iPhone 12 significantly pulls ahead. The iPhone 11 has an LCD screen with a resolution of 1792 by 828, whereas the iPhone 12 has a higher resolution 1170 by 2532 Super Retina XDR OLED panel. Both phones have a typical peak brightness of 625 nits. However, with the iPhone 12, due to the fact that it's HDR10 certified, it means that in these modes, it can actually reach a peak brightness of 1200 nits. The 12 also has a better PPI rating, Dolby Vision, and all in all is a significant upgrade. Both phones measure in at 6.1 inches, and another thing that they share is that True Tone display. If you don't know what this is, it essentially means that if your lighting situation changes, the colors on your phone screen will actually get either warmer or colder, depending on what type of light you just walked into, to keep your colors nice and balanced. Doesn't sound like a lot, but trust me, once you try to go back from it, you will definitely notice the difference. Both phones also feature haptic touch as the secondary interaction method, and as I said before, I was a big fan of 3D touch, but honestly, software has mostly bridged this at this point, and doing tasks like creating new notes or opening the Instagram camera is very easy on both. Overall, once again, the iPhone 12 screen does get a nice upgrade over the iPhone 11, and And as somebody who really likes a nice screen on their phone, this was actually one of the most important features for me, and one of the reasons why I actually switched to using this as my personal device. Okay, so moving on, we have the button layout, which, to be honest, hasn't really changed all that much since the start of the notched iPhone line. However, at this point, the design feels mature and just now makes sense. The iPhone 12 obviously does have that squared off design, very similar to that of the iPhone 5, but we've already been over that, and as I said before, I do find it a lot more grippy, and so at least for me, that does make using this bigger phone much easier. Both phones have an isolated lock button, separate volume up and down buttons, and that ever useful mute switch. All the buttons feel nice and tactile on both, and I have very few issues with either. That said, once again, I do still prefer the iPhone 12 due to its squared off design, but to be honest, this segment's kind of personal preference. Alright, so next up, we're going to be talking about Face ID. Now, if you've already seen my review on the iPhone 11, then you'll know that I really liked the Face ID. I actually felt like it was the first genuine improvement since the first notched iPhone, because unlike the 10 and 10s that came before it, you can actually unlock it from many different angles. It's about the same as the iPhone 12. Honestly, though, this isn't a bad thing. As I said, I do really like the Face ID on the iPhone 11, so while I would have liked to see some form of significant improvement on the Face ID, I don't really know what they'd improve. The Face ID on the iPhone 11 is some of the best I've ever used. So yeah, both are pretty great in this regard. Alright, so after this, we have the camera, and to be honest, again, it doesn't look like a lot's changed here. Both have that dual camera separate lens look, but if we actually take a closer look, we can see there are some key differences between the two. Both phones feature a wide ultra-wide system, however, the iPhone 12 actually has a faster wide lens. The iPhone 11's wide lens has a resolution of 12 megapixels and an aperture of f1.8. However, the iPhone 12's wide-angle lens has a resolution of 12 megapixels again, but a slightly faster aperture of f1.6. What this means is it will essentially be slightly easier to get a blurrier background, and of course, more light will be let in, so in low-light situations, the iPhone 12 will be slightly better. Both phones feature a very similar ultra-wide camera again. However, once we get over to the night mode, we can see that there is a key difference between them. Again, both front-facing cameras are very similar here. Both are 12 megapixels. Both have an aperture of f2.2. Alright, so specs are all well and good. However, how's the actual performance? In terms of actual photo performance, I've actually been super impressed with both, thanks to some cool processing. Photos look sharp with a great level of saturation and some amazing dynamic range. I found the photos that you can get with that ultra-wide lens can look really cool. You can get some really nice, unique-looking angles. That said, if you do want the best possible optical performance, then I would recommend just using the wide angle, as there is occasionally a little bit of distortion around the edges of photos with the ultra-wide, but for the most part, photos out of these phones look fantastic. In terms of night mode, both phones have it. However, on the iPhone 12, not only can you use it on the wide-angle lens, you can also use it on the ultra-wide and front-facing cameras, which is a nice addition. Once again, low-light performance will be best on the wide-angle lens, so if you want the best possible performance, then I would personally recommend just using the wide-angle. Of course, both phones do feature portrait mode, which has kind of become a staple on iPhones at this point. However, as I noted in my iPhone 12 review, I have actually found that the edge detection on the iPhone 12 does seem to work a little bit better, and you get less of those jagged, unnatural-looking edges that we're used to seeing in portrait mode. Overall, photo performance is pretty great on both, but I'd say there is definitely a few nice little upgrades when going to the iPhone 12. That said, how's the video performance? Of course, both shoot 4K and up to 60 FPS, but I found that most of the exciting changes were to do with dynamic range. Well, the iPhone 11 got extended dynamic range and up to 60 FPS on the main camera and 30 FPS on the front-facing camera. On the iPhone 11, at least up to 30 FPS, you can shoot in Dolby Vision HDR, which looks absolutely stunning. Both phones can also shoot slow motion, 1080p and up to 240 FPS, and to be honest, neither are particularly stunning, but both will do just fine for some casual slow motion shots. As well as, slow fees. Those are a thing on both. Overall, well, both are great. We do see a nice little bump in quality and features on the iPhone 12. It just feels a little bit more refined with the Dolby Vision HDR, the night mode available on all cameras, and the slightly better portrait mode, at least to my findings. But to be honest, both are going to make pretty fantastic pocket-friendly cameras. Okay, so next up, we're going to be talking OS and app performance with each device, probably the most important part of any modern smartphone experience. So yeah, let's talk about that. Both are great in this regard, honestly. Scrolling through the OS, opening apps, and functions like taking screenshots are all instant, and overall the OS performance on these phones is very good. Now, the iPhone 12 did ship with iOS 14, and seeing as it's a year newer, it is likely to last longer overall. So if you are the type of person to keep your phone for as long as possible, then most likely in this regard, the iPhone 12 will be better, which is honestly pretty nice, seeing as $700 isn't cheap. Performance is also likely to stay better for longer with the iPhone 12, thanks to that new A14 processor, which of course does overall have better performance. So once again, if you're really into, say, your mobile gaming, chances are both are going to be excellent at the moment. But iPhone 12 is just more likely to stay good for longer. As for now though, watching videos and playing games is a great experience on both, and I have had pretty much no issues with either, which is nice. Next up, we have these speakers, and again, doesn't really look like a lot's changed here. On the iPhone 11, we did get that spatial audio playback to give a more full sounding experience, kind of building on what Apple already had with the stereo technology, and I found that it just gave it a more full sounding experience, at least compared to older iPhones. So again, while not a lot has changed in this regard on the iPhone 12, this really isn't a big issue for me, at least for casual listening. The iPhone 11 speakers were totally fine. Finally, and appropriately last, we have the battery life. The iPhone 11 has a battery size of 3,110 mAh, whereas the iPhone 12 has a smaller 2,815 mAh battery. And to be honest, this is noticeable. While the iPhone 12 does have more charging options with that new MagSafe option, the battery life is overall better on the iPhone 11. Don't get me wrong, I've never struggled to get through a full day with the iPhone 12, but the iPhone 11 just keeps on going and going. I never have to think about my charge level when taking the iPhone 11 out for the day, which is nice. Okay, so to wrap this up, which of these two phones is the better buy? To be honest, it kind of just depends on what you're looking for. If you want the better battery life and cheaper price tag of the iPhone 11, it's still going to give you a great experience, even over a year into its life cycle. However, if you want the new design, better screen, improved camera, and want to keep your phone for as long as possible, then the iPhone 12 is certainly worth looking at. Regardless of which phone you pick, both will be a great option in 2020. As I said, just depends on what you're looking for. Alright guys, so that's it for today. Let me know in the comments which of these two phones you prefer. As always, thank you for watching. Remember to like the video if you want to see more content like this, and smash that subscribe button. I'm done for now, and I will see you guys in the next one.